Hello, our group, consisting of Jean Paul, Patrick, Apollo, and Diego, will be presenting our project about the conflict of should social medias be regulated? So, first, we'll be going over the history of media regulation and then also the history of social media regulation to give some background to our conflict. Since the invention of media, there's constantly been a debate over censorship of speech. Starting with radio and later television, there's always been a constant back and forth between media companies and the government. Since these companies are presenting and publishing information, they have to be regulated by the government for the best interests of the people. Social media changed this, mainly due to the fact that it's used by the masses and is user controlled. Companies like Twitter and Facebook are not creating specific content and publishing it to the people. They rather give people the control to create content which fuels their apps and websites. Since the users decide what they put out, it can't be regulated by the government because of the First Amendment. Social media platforms don't technically infringe on freedom of speech because they're private organizations. This means they're allowed to create rules around content for their sites, and with this comes many challenges. In today's media environment, social media platforms are a first-hand source of information for a large majority of people. Rather than watching the news on TV or reading reputable sources, many people turn to social media to see what's happening. Social media is a bad place to get accurate news from, but if it's the first place people go to, then shouldn't the goal be to get the information as accurate as possible? Many platforms say they're already regulating what's happening on their platform, but that is barely true. Before recently, social media sites have been a free-for-all when it comes to certain types of content. The top social media platforms allow users to post extreme content without much opposition. Things like racism, homophobia, bullying, false information, violence, and much more plague many social media sites. This has been an ongoing issue with social media since its inception. These sites are just an extension of a person's self, so with that comes the good and bad. Issues that have plagued society for years have easily found their way onto social media sites. In recent times, the topic of regulation has been in the forefront of the news, with people caring much more about issues like racism and false information on social media sites. They see the negative effects of these, and they now want an effort to be made to eliminate these forms of content. There's a few different viewpoints. Some see this as an attack of their freedom of speech and see these companies as choosing sides. Others see this as a positive step towards eliminating negative content. Some are in between. There are many different issues pertaining to social media regulation. How will the content be regulated? Who chooses what's good or bad? Is there a limit to the regulations? When do companies have too much power? Are people allowed to say what they want? All of these are questions that need to be resolved within this debate. The best example of social media regulation came with Donald Trump, when Twitter and Facebook removed him from their platforms for spreading false information. These included issues around the 2020 election, COVID-19, social issues, the Capitol riot, and much more. He would go on long Twitter rants about these issues that fueled his supporters. His supporters argue he has a right to say these things, and others believe these tweets caused extreme harm. It's easy to see the situation and think that the issue was clearly resolved, but it's not. When this happened, it sparked a huge debate on how social media sites determine what's misinformation or harmful, and if they're allowed to even regulate him. This especially gets difficult when the issues are widely debated amongst the population of users. Overall, one side wants more regulation of what they think is bad content, and the other side wants to be able to have full control over what content they're able to put out.
Within conflict, it seems like there are always two sides. This is true, but those two sides are greatly influenced by outside forces. In our conflict, the two sides will be people who want social media regulation and those who don't want social media regulations. People want to support the cause because they believe that regulations will stop the spread of hate and misinformation on social media sites. The opposition believes that they should be able to freely say what they believe without fear of it being regulated. An example with Donald Trump, those two sides are easily seen. An example of social media regulation is what happened between Donald Trump and Twitter. In the 2 days after the election day, Twitter added warning labels to 9 of President Donald Trump's elections-related tweets, cautioning the messages might be misleading. They are misleading and in some cases false due to Trump being vocal about how he felt of the U.S. election process and mail-in voting. According to Twitter, Trump is using Twitter to spread misinformation. Twitter also accuses Trump of violating their policies on using their platform to incite violence due to the storming of the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Trump believes social media should be free from discrimination against political ideology, hence why he released a new platform, The Truth, after his banning from Twitter. Donald Trump claimed Twitter damaged the integrity of the U.S. election system by banning him from social media platform for stoking last year's insurrection. Despite the accusations made by both parties, here are the facts. Case 1. Misinformation. Donald Trump tweets, "Any vote that came in after the election day will not be counted," end quote. There has been no evidence of voter fraud affecting the outcome of the 2020 election, and the Trump campaign provided none when asked. We don't know what specifically the president may be referring to, but the vague, baseless claim is similar to his past repeated assertions. Case number 2. False accusation. Trump tweets, "There is a large number of secretly dumped ballots as has been widely reported," end quote. Trump's lead did not magically disappear due to surprise ballot dumps. Rather, his lead narrowed in the days following the election in some states as election officials began counting legally cast mail-in ballots. Case number 3. False accusation. Trump claims there has been a voter fraud and falsely says there is plenty of proof. His campaign has yet to provide any type of proof. Case number 4. Insult and hate speech. On May 25th, 2020, Trump makes a tweet referring to the coronavirus as the China virus.
Most mainstream apps and social media have high censorship and a lot of policing on what is posted. These apps are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But what happens when you let people post what they want? 4chan was created by a 15-year-old who went by Moot on October 1st, 2003. 4chan is a message and image board where you can anonymously make posts. The site was created so like-minded people could make posts about anime, which Moot was very interested in at the time. The site quickly grew and more boards with different subjects were created. As we see a lot with platforms that let you post whatever, within 1 year, one of the boards had already turned into a place where CP was posted due to lack of regulation. After receiving threats of legal action, it was deleted. In that same year, GoDaddy had suspended the domain due to controversy surrounding the site, causing it to change its domain. For 7 years, the site had been going well until 2011, when multiple boards had been discovered to mostly just hold racist discussion and then were deleted. Racist boards and boards containing CP have plagued 4chan's mainstream reputation. So while doing research, I wanted to see both sides of the website. For example, William J. Lashua posted that he was celebrating his 90th birthday, but no one was going. So 4chan came together to send him letters, gifts, and even meet in person for his birthday party. While doing research, this was the best thing 4chan had done. I saw it all over. I see the same story posted over and over as an example that the site is good. At the same time, an 11-year-old girl who had been getting bullied on the site posted a video going after her haters. So a group of 4chan users found her address and phone number and began making threats to the 11-year-old girl. The group went as far as even staging a suicide. Yes, staging a suicide of an 11-year-old girl. The girl eventually went into police protection. Censorship is being reevaluated today with what is happening in Eastern Europe. Just this last Friday, Russia clamped down on freedom of speech in the news. This is the most restrictive that Vladimir Putin has been about news in his 22 years of power. He has blocked all major foreign news outlets and Facebook. If you are caught spreading false information about the invasion of Ukraine, then you can face up to 15 years in prison. He also put in place on Saturday that practically any public opposition or independent reporting about the war in Ukraine was a criminal act. Even calling the war a war can get you jail time, and you must call it a special military operation. With all these new crackdowns, most independent Russian news outlets have been forced to close. This means that the only news that the people of Russia are getting is controlled completely by the state. Within less than a week, these people are completely in the dark about what is truly happening. By June 1st, 2021, Trump had been banned on Twitter and Facebook indefinitely. This is when he decided that he needed to make his own platform called Truth Social. The mission statement of the platform is, Truth Social is America's big tent social media platform that encourages an open, free, and honest global conversation without discriminating against political ideology. For research for this project, I decided to download the app and see what it was really about. Once I downloaded the app, I was placed on a wait list. After a week of being on the wait list, I am at 1,036,807 on the wait list. This seems to be an issue for most people and where a lot of bad reviews come from, and to this day I am still at this exact point on the wait list. While researching the Truth app, it seemed that it was very similar to the Parler app. Parler, where free speech thrives, was launched in September of 2018. After the removal of multiple conservative commentators from apps like Twitter and Facebook, they moved to this app. This app played a big part in the spread of misinformation and the January 6th Capitol riot. The app was even removed from the App Store and dropped by Amazon 4 days after. We've seen what happens when apps like this are created, but maybe truth can be different.
The question now asks, should we regulate social media? The following are the arguments against social media regulation. No, social media shouldn't be regulated because the First Amendment protects the freedom of speech of all people. The First Amendment protects hate speech from government censorship unless that speech is likely to incite negative actions. It writes, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. No, social media shouldn't be regulated to be free from government censorship. Just like any other citizens, social media companies have a First Amendment right to free speech, and a lot of the proposals to regulate these companies resemble government speech regulations and run right into the First Amendment. No, social media shouldn't be regulated because freedom of speech is a human right. As aforementioned, the First Amendment protects individuals from government censorship. Social media platforms and private companies can censor what people post on their website. There is no legal age you have to reach to exercise your First Amendment freedoms. They are guaranteed to people the day they're born. There is no citizenship requirement for First Amendment protection. The following are the arguments for social media regulation. Yes, social media should be regulated because it eliminates misinformation that causes chaos. Misinformation is false or inaccurate information. Examples of misinformation include false rumors, insults, or pranks, while examples of more deliberate disinformation include malicious content such as spread phishing and propaganda. It is the source of fake news, which violates everyone's right to know the facts. Yes, social media should be regulated because hate speech is speech that offends or attacks people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or other traits. According to the Council of Europe, hate speech poses grave dangers for the cohesion of a democratic society, the protection of human rights, and the rule of law. If it is left unaddressed, it can lead to acts of violence and conflict on a wider scale. In this sense, hate speech is an extreme form of intolerance which contributes to hate crime. Yes, social media should be regulated because it brings fairness and safety on the internet. Regulations of this kind of intellectual property are important because beyond preventing the spread of fake news and putting a stop to harmful activities, it sets the limits. Yes, social media should be regulated because it brings fairness and safety on the internet. Regulations for this kind of intellectual property are important because beyond preventing the spread of fake news and putting a stop to harmful activities, it sets the limits of common sense and it protects data against identity theft. One common example of internet regulation is the European General Data Protection Regulation, or in short, GDPR. Before the basis of GDPR was placed, people in European countries were asking for comprehensive regulation on the internet. The law of the GDPR protects how data is used, respecting the privacy while using only what is necessary. It acts on lawfulness, purpose limitation, fairness and transparency, confidentiality and integrity, data minimization, accountability, and storage limitation.
Overall, the conflict has two very passionate sides to it, and each side fights for what they believe in. Yet, the conflict is still up for debate and will unlikely be resolved soon.